They thought humans were timid, observers who preferred silence to action. Every council meeting, every battlefield, humans sat in the back, calm, unreadable. To the galaxy's mightiest, it was a sign of weakness and of fear. But when the first shots were fired and chaos erupted across the stars, they finally learned why humanity waits. Because when humans move, it's already too late to stop them. The wisdom of shadows, the assembly of stars. The Galactic Assembly Hall floated in the void between solar systems, a monument to civilization itself. It was not built on any world, nor did it orbit any star. Instead, it hung in the perfect balance of gravitational forces from 3 distant suns, drawing energy from all of them. The structure was massive beyond comprehension, a sphere of crystalline metal and light that could be seen from planets millions of kilometers away. Inside, the main chamber stretched for kilometers. The ceiling arched so high above that clouds sometimes formed near the top. The walls were transparent, showing the endless stars beyond. Thousands of seats arranged in concentric circles descended toward the center speaking platform, like an ancient amphitheater built for gods. But this theater had a hierarchy. The seats nearest the platform belonged to the powerful. The Kratheon Empire held the first ring. Their warriors stood over 4 meters tall, covered in natural armor plates of deep crimson. Their forearms ended in claws that could tear through steel. They had conquered 73 worlds before joining the assembly, and their military might was unmatched. They sat in the front because no one dared tell them otherwise. Beside them sat the Silvery Collective, beings of pure crystalline energy contained in translucent forms. They glowed with inner light that shifted through colors no human eye should see. Their minds could touch thoughts across vast distances. They could crush mental barriers and shatter consciousness with focused will. They earned their front seats through power that transcended the physical. The Zenith Federation occupied the 3rd section of the front ring. They resembled mechanical insects, though they were entirely biological. Their civilization had mastered technology that seemed like magic to others. Their ships moved through dimensions that other species could barely detect. Their weapons could disassemble matter at the atomic level. They spoke in harmonic frequencies that required translation devices. Row after row behind these 3 sat other mighty species. The Thorvans, beings of living stone who could survive anything. The Aetheron, who controlled electromagnetic forces with their bodies. The Kuldrex Swarm, a hive consciousness controlling millions of individual forms. Each row represented diminishing power, diminishing conquest, diminishing respect, and in the very back, where the light from the center barely reached, sat the humans. Dr. Elena Vasquez adjusted her simple gray suit and looked around the chamber with calm, dark eyes. She was 53 years old with silver threading through her black hair. Her face showed the lines of someone who smiled often, though she was not smiling now. Around her sat 11 other human representatives, advisors, and specialists in various fields. They spoke quietly among themselves, reviewing data on their tablets, preparing for another session where they would mostly listen. A Kratheon commander named Vexthor turned his massive head toward the back rows, his eyes burning like molten copper, fixed on the human section. His voice boomed across the chamber, amplified by nothing but the acoustics of the space and his own powerful lungs. "I see the humans have arrived. Punctual as always. Tell me, Dr. Vasquez, how is the view from back there? Can you see the platform? Or should we install viewing screens for you?" Laughter rippled through several sections. Some species found the mockery amusing. Others remained silent, uncomfortable with such open disrespect. Elena stood slowly. She was barely half Vexthor's height, and her voice was quiet by comparison. Yet somehow it carried through the chamber with perfect clarity. "The view is excellent, Commander Vexthor. From here we can see everything, including you." Vexthor snorted, a sound like grinding rocks. 150 years you have been among the stars. 150 years in the assembly. And what have you achieved? You have conquered no worlds. Your military is modest. Your technology is adequate but not exceptional. Your bodies are fragile. You cannot survive in most environments without protective equipment. You sit in the back because that is where you belong. Elena did not look away from his gaze. "We sit where we are seated, Commander. We have made no complaints about our position." "Because you know your place," Vexthor said. "I respect that at least. Better to accept weakness than to pretend at strength you do not possess." Before Elena could respond, the chamber's lights shifted. A deep harmonic tone filled the air and all conversation ceased. The presider materialized at the center platform. It was a luminar, a being of pure organized light, ancient beyond measure. Its form constantly shifted, never quite solid, never quite transparent. The emergency session begins. The presider's voice resonated through every mind present, transcending language. The matter is grave. The entity we have designated the Void Swarm has accelerated its advance. 12 colony systems have gone silent in the past 14 cycles. 4 fleets sent to investigate have not returned. We face an extinction-level threat. Holographic projections filled the air above the platform. Images of destruction appeared, vast and terrible. Entire stations reduced to debris, planets stripped of all life, and moving through the wreckage, things that defied easy description. The Void Swarm did not look like ships or machines. They looked organic yet artificial, vast entities that moved through space like predators through water. Their bodies were black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Tendrils and appendages extended from central masses. Energy crackled along their surfaces in colors that hurt to see. The smallest ones were the size of buildings. The largest appeared to be the size of moons. How many? Vexthor demanded, standing at his full, imposing height. Intelligence estimates placed the approaching force at over 2,000 individual entities, the presider said. They are converging on the assembly's outer territories from multiple vectors. At their current speed, they will reach core systems within 60 cycles. The chamber erupted in voices. Species spoke in hundreds of languages simultaneously, the translation systems struggling to keep pace. Fear and fury mixed in equal measure. Vexthor's voice cut through the chaos. The Kratheon Empire will meet this threat. We have never retreated from any enemy. We will not start now. Give us the coordinates of the largest concentration. We will show these creatures the price of threatening the assembly. A Sylvari named Lyrison spoke next, her voice like singing crystals. The Sylvari collective stands with Kratheon. Our mental power will shatter their consciousness. No mind can resist our combined will. Ziktal, the Zenith Federation's lead representative, added his harmonic voice through the translator. Zenith technology will dismantle these entities. Our dimensional weapons have never failed. We will erase them from existence. One by one, the front row species pledged their fleets. Each one spoke of their strength, their weapons, their absolute certainty of victory. They had never been truly defeated. They could not imagine defeat now. The presider turned its attention toward the back rows. What of the lesser contributors? Will humanity and the other outer members add your forces to the defense? Elena stood again. Humanity will deploy observation vessels to monitor the engagement zones. We will provide rescue and recovery operations for any survivors. We will document all encounters and share our findings with the assembly. Vexthor laughed, and this time there was genuine contempt in the sound. Observation vessels, of course. You will watch from safety while we fight and bleed. You will take notes while we die. This is the human contribution to galactic defense. Yes, Elena said simply. That is our contribution. The presider moved on to other species. Votes were called. Decisions were made. The front row species would lead the defense. Their combined fleets would meet the Void Swarm at the outer territories. Victory would be theirs. History would remember their courage. The humans said nothing more during the session. They recorded everything. When the assembly adjourned, they filed out quietly, still talking among themselves in low voices. The first battles, the Kratheon fleet arrived at the outer perimeter first. Vexthor commanded from his flagship, the Crimson Fang, a warship 3 kilometers long and armed with enough firepower to crack planets. Behind him came 400 warships, each one a masterpiece of military engineering. The Kratheon did not build ships for elegance. They built them for war. The Void Swarm met them at the edge of the Helion system. The sensors detected them first, vast signatures moving through space at speeds that should not be possible for objects of that mass. Then they appeared visually, and even the battle-hardened Kratheon warriors felt a moment of uncertainty. There were 73 of them in this group. The smallest was 50 meters across. The largest was over a kilometer. They did not move like ships. They moved like living creatures with purpose and intention. Their black surfaces seemed to absorb the light from the nearby star. All ships combat formation, Vexthor commanded. Show them the might of Kratheon. The fleet advanced. Weapons charged, targeting systems locked on. The Kratheon had fought wars for millennia. They knew battle like they knew breathing. Fire. The void of space erupted with violence. Energy beams lanced out, each one carrying enough power to vaporize a city. Missiles streaked forward, hundreds of them, each warhead capable of devastating destruction. Kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds turned space into a death zone. The barrage hit the void swarm entities, and for a moment, Vexthor allowed himself to feel satisfaction. Explosions bloomed across their surfaces. Several of the smaller entities were torn apart, their bodies fragmenting into debris. But the larger ones kept coming. Scorch marks appeared on their surfaces, then faded. The damage seemed to heal almost as fast as it was inflicted. Then the swarm returned fire. Their weapons were unlike anything in the assembly's experience. Beams of twisted energy that did not simply destroy matter but seemed to unwrite it from reality. Where these beams touched, Krathion ships did not explode. They simply ceased to exist as if they had never been there at all. The Crimson Fang's shields held for 7 seconds. Then they failed. A beam grazed the ship's port side and 300 meters of hull simply vanished. Alarms screamed. Sections depressurized. Warriors died instantly, pulled into the void. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Increased shield modulation. Vexthor roared, but it was not enough. The battle lasted 18 hours. The Krathion fought with everything they had. They rammed their ships into the entities when weapons failed. They boarded the creatures, warriors cutting their way inside with plasma weapons. They fought with the fury of a species that had never known defeat. When it was over, the void swarm withdrew. They disappeared back into deep space, leaving behind a field of debris. Vexthor stood in his damaged command center, breathing hard. Around him, his crew worked frantically to keep the ship functional. The displays showed the cost. 162 ships destroyed. 84 damaged. 47,000 warriors dead, but they had destroyed 21 entities. The swarm had retreated. It was a victory, technically. Send word to the assembly, Vexthor said, his voice hoarse. The Krathion have engaged the enemy. We have proven they can be killed. The pattern emerges. The Silvery Collective fought next in the Aurora Expanse. They brought 300 vessels, ships that gleamed like crystal and moved with impossible grace. They did not rely on conventional weapons. They relied on the power of the mind. As the Void Swarm approached, the Silvari reached out with their consciousness. They touched the entities with psychic force, trying to confuse them, control them, shut down their minds. At first it worked. Several entities stopped moving, floating dead in space. The Silvari felt triumph. This was their domain. The mind was their battlefield. Then the swarm adapted. A feedback wave hit the Silvari fleet, a mental scream that crossed light years. Silvari collapsed in their command centers, crystalline forms cracking under the assault. Ships lost control. Some collided with each other. Others simply drifted, their crews incapacitated. The Silvari were forced to retreat, leaving 63 ships behind. The Zenith Federation fought at the edge of known space. They brought their dimensional weapons, devices that could fold space itself, crushing anything caught in the field. These weapons destroyed 37 entities in the first wave, but the swarm learned. They began spreading their formation, moving in patterns that made the dimensional weapons ineffective. They adapted their own energy fields to resist the spatial distortions. The Zenith lost 71 ships before withdrawing. Week after week, battle after battle, the pattern repeated. Front row species fought with courage and power. They won engagements. They killed entities. But the cost was terrible. And with each battle, the swarm seemed to learn. Tactics that worked once became less effective the second time. By the third use, they were almost useless. And at the edge of every battle, small human vessels appeared. They did not fight. They stayed distant, sensors active, recording everything. They rescued survivors when they could. They documented every detail of every engagement. After the Battle of Meridian Station, where the Krathion lost another 90 ships, Vexthor had finally had enough. His fleet was limping back to the rally point when he detected human ships nearby. He opened a communication channel, his face appearing on the displays of every human vessel. "Humans," he said, his voice like a growl. "I see you again. Always watching. Always at a safe distance. Never fighting. I ask you directly, are you cowards, or is there another reason you hide while others die?" Captain James Harrison commanded the lead human ship. He was 48 years old with graying hair and tired eyes. He had been in space for 4 months without rest, watching battle after battle, recording death after death. "Commander Vexthor," James said calmly, "we are not hiding. We are learning." "Learning what?" "How to survive while others fight your battles." "Learning how to win," James replied. "Commander, in the past 4 months, how many ships has Kratheon lost?" Vexthor's expression darkened. "That is not your concern." 347 ships, James said quietly. 68% of your fleet. The Sylvari have lost 42%. The Zenith 51%. Every front row species has lost between 40 and 70% of their military strength. "We have been fighting," Vexthor said. "Fighting requires sacrifice. And humanity has lost 9 ships," James continued. 3% of our fleet. We have had 412 casualties. You have had over 100,000. Because you do not fight. Because we do not make the same mistakes you do, James said. And now there was an edge in his voice. "Commander, we have watched every battle. We have recorded every tactic. And we have seen the pattern. The swarm adapts to aggressive tactics. Every time you charge forward, they learn. They evolve countermeasures within hours." He brought up data on his display, sharing it with Vexthor. "Watch. Here you use ramming tactics. By the next engagement, the swarm targets your engines first, making ramming impossible. Here the Sylvari use mental attacks. Within one battle, the swarm develops mental shielding. Here the Zenith use dimensional weapons. By the third use, the swarm has learned to spread its formation to minimize effectiveness." Vexthor stared at the data. He could not argue with the evidence. James continued, his voice softer now. "But when we appear, moving slowly at the edges, the swarm barely reacts. They focus all their attention on the aggressive species, the ones that look like predators, the ones that look dangerous. We appear weak, so they dismiss us. And while they dismiss us, we watch, we learn, we document. What good is learning if you never act?" Vexthor demanded. "Commander," James said, "we now have comprehensive scans of 819 different swarm entities. We have mapped their communication frequencies. We have identified structural weaknesses. We have cataloged every adaptation they have made. We know their response time, their learning curve, their limitations." He paused. "We know how to beat them. But we had to learn first. If we had charged into battle like everyone else, we would be dead like everyone else. Sometimes the strongest action is patience." Vexthor was silent for a long moment. Finally he spoke, his voice quieter than before. "If you know how to defeat them, then speak. Share your knowledge. Or do you intend to watch until we are all dead?" "We will share everything," James said. "But first we need to convince the Assembly to listen. And to change how they fight. Commander, would you be willing to support us when we present our findings?" Vexthor looked at this human, this small, fragile creature who had just explained how patience and observation had accomplished what raw strength could not. "I will support you," Vexthor said finally. "You have earned that much, human." The communication ended. James sat back in his command chair, exhausted. His crew looked at him, waiting. "Send word to Dr. Vasquez," James said. "Tell her it is time. Tell her the Assembly needs to listen now, or there will be no one left to save." The Symphony of Unity, the Emergency Coalition. The Assembly Hall had never been called to session with such urgency. The presider did not wait for the standard rotation. The message went out across all channels simultaneously. Emergency session, mandatory attendance, immediate convening. When the representatives arrived, they found the chamber different. The usual formality was gone, replaced by tension thick enough to taste. Species that normally maintained careful diplomatic distance now spoke in urgent clusters. The front rows, usually filled with confident warriors, now held beings who looked exhausted, wounded, grieving. Vexthor entered with what remained of his command staff. His crimson armor bore scorch marks that had not been repaired. One of his 4 arms moved stiffly, still healing from injuries sustained in the last battle. He took his seat in the front row, but he did not sit with the same pride as before. Behind him, the Kratheon section was half empty. So many had not returned. The Sylvari section glowed more dimly than usual. Several of their crystalline forms showed cracks that would never fully heal. Lyrison sat with her light flickering, a sign of deep exhaustion that no Sylvari would normally allow others to see. The Zenith section was quieter than it had ever been. Their harmonic frequencies, usually constant and complex, now played in simpler, sadder tones. and in the back, the human section was full. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat with her team, all of them reviewing final preparations on their tablets. They looked tired but focused. Captain James Harrison had joined them, fresh from the front lines, still wearing his ship uniform. The presider materialized at the center platform, its light form pulsing with unusual intensity. "We are losing," it said, and the blunt statement sent shock through the chamber. The presider never spoke so directly. "In 74 engagements across 42 systems, we have lost 63% of our combined military forces. The Void Swarm continues to advance. They adapt to every tactic. They learn from every battle. At the current rate of attrition, the Assembly will lack the strength to mount effective defense within 30 cycles." Silence fell across the chamber. Even the proud warrior species had no response to mathematics that stark. If any representative has new intelligence or strategic proposals, they must speak now. "If we continue on our current path, we face extinction." Elena stood. For the first time in 150 years of human membership, a representative from the back row walked down toward the center platform. Every eye in the chamber followed her, some with curiosity, some with skepticism, many with barely concealed contempt. She reached the center, standing before the presider. She was tiny compared to most species present, yet she stood straight, her voice clear. "Humanity requests permission to address the Assembly. We have intelligence that may alter the current situation." The presider regarded her. "The Assembly recognizes Dr. Elena Vasquez of Earth. Speak." Before Elena could begin, a voice boomed from the third row. It belonged to Krathzar, a Thorvan commander whose species had lost entire fleets. "The humans wish to speak? The humans who have hidden at the edges of every battle? The humans who have contributed almost nothing to the defense? What can they possibly tell us that we do not already know about fighting and dying?" Vexthor stood, his massive form drawing all attention. "I ask the Assembly to hear Dr. Vasquez. The humans have been observing with purpose. I have seen their data. If there is any hope of changing our fortunes, it may lie in what they have learned." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Vexthor supporting the humans? The Krathion commander who had mocked them so publicly? Lyrison stood as well, her crystalline voice singing softly. The Silvari also wished to hear the human perspective. "Our current strategies are failing. Pride should not prevent us from considering alternatives." The presider gestured to Elena. "The Assembly will hear you, Dr. Vasquez. Present your findings." Elena activated the data core she carried. Holographic projections filled the space above the platform, visible to every seat in the chamber. For the past 4 months, humanity has been conducting comprehensive observation of every engagement with the Void Swarm. We have documented 74 battles involving 31 different species. We have compiled data on 819 individual swarm entities, and we have identified patterns that explain both why we are losing and how we might win. The first projection showed a swarm entity rotating slowly, with detailed anatomical scans overlaid. The Void Swarm is not mindless. They possess sophisticated intelligence, but it operates fundamentally differently from biological or artificial intelligence as we understand it. They are reactive learners with near-perfect adaptation capabilities but limited predictive capacity. She brought up battle footage, multiple engagements playing simultaneously. Observe. In every battle, the swarm initially suffers casualties. Then within minutes to hours, they adapt. When the Krathion use ramming tactics, the swarm learns to target engines. When the Silvari attack mentally, the swarm develops psychic shielding. When the Zenith use dimensional weapons, the swarm adjusts their formation and energy fields. Krathzar interrupted. "We know they adapt. Tell us something useful." Elena met his gaze calmly. "What is useful is understanding how they adapt. The swarm responds to perceived threats based on a hierarchy of danger. They allocate attention and resources to the most aggressive, most powerful, most threatening opposition first." She pulled up new data, showing graphs and energy signatures. When aggressive species attack with overwhelming force, the swarm identifies them as primary threats. Over 90% of swarm attention and adaptation focus on these species. Their learning algorithms prioritize countering whatever tactic appears most dangerous. A new image appeared. Human ships at the edge of a battle, moving slowly. But when humanity appears, we do not register as a primary threat. We move slowly. We use minimal weapons. We avoid aggressive posturing. The swarm allocates less than 3% of its attention to us. We are dismissed as irrelevant. Zichtal's harmonic voice came through the translator. You admit to being irrelevant. How does this help? Because while the swarm dismisses us, we learn everything about them without triggering their adaptation response, Elena said. We have discovered that the swarm has a distributed communication network operating on specific frequencies. This network coordinates their adaptation. Disrupt the network, and their adaptation becomes uncoordinated and much slower. The projection changed, showing complex network maps. We have mapped 17 primary communication nodes within any given swarm formation. These nodes relay adaptation information between entities. The network has a synchronization delay of approximately 4 to 7 minutes depending on formation size. If we can disrupt these nodes simultaneously, we create a window of vulnerability. She continued, pulling up more data. Additionally, the swarm's physical structure is not uniform. They have reinforced sections and vulnerable sections. They always orient their strongest armor toward the most aggressive threat, but their flanks and rear sections are significantly weaker. Attacks from unexpected angles during the vulnerability window can inflict catastrophic damage. The projections showed simulation after simulation, demonstrating the concepts most critically. The swarm cannot predict cooperative tactics they have never encountered. They adapt to what they see, not to what they might see. Their intelligence is reactive, not creative. If we present them with completely novel strategies that require coordination between multiple species, strategies used only once at the critical moment, they cannot adapt quickly enough. Elena paused, letting the information settle. But none of this matters if we continue fighting as we have been. Individual species attacking separately, each using their traditional tactics, each triggering immediate adaptation. The swarm defeats us because we fight as individuals. The only way to win is to fight as a unified force. The great proposal, the chamber erupted. Species spoke over each other, some intrigued, others outraged. The idea of unified command, of setting aside individual glory and traditional tactics, went against everything the warrior cultures believed. Elena waited for the noise to subside, then continued. I propose a coordinated defense strategy utilizing every species according to their unique strengths, not their traditional roles. This requires trust. It requires species who normally compete to work together. It requires the powerful to accept guidance from the analytical. It requires us to stop thinking as individual species and start thinking as a united assembly. She brought up a tactical display showing a theoretical battle formation. Here is the framework. The Kratheon, Thorvin, and other warrior species become the primary engagement force. Your role is not to win the battle, but to draw swarm attention, to make them focus on you, to trigger their adaptation response. You become the hammer that holds their attention. Vexthor studied the display intently. This was not how Kratheon fought, but he was listening. The Sylvari, your mental attacks are no longer effective as weapons, but your ability to sense thought patterns and energy signatures is unmatched. You become our intelligence network. You map the swarm's communication nodes in real time. You tell us where to strike. Lyrasen's light pulsed with interest. The Zenith, your dimensional technology is ineffective as an area weapon, but what if you use it for precision transportation? Small rifts, opened and closed in seconds, allowing strike forces to appear exactly where the swarm does not expect them. You become our mobility, our element of surprise. Zichtal's harmonic shifted to curious frequencies. Elena continued through species after species, assigning roles based on capabilities rather than traditional combat doctrines. The Luminar would provide energy distribution across the fleet. The Aetheron would create electromagnetic interference to compound communication disruption. Species from the middle and back rows, usually considered minor contributors, suddenly had critical functions. And humanity will serve as tactical coordination and deploy novel weapons specifically designed to exploit swarm vulnerabilities. Weapons they have never seen. Weapons we will use exactly once at the moment of maximum vulnerability. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes from every row. This plan requires something that has never existed in the Assembly's history: complete cooperation. Every species following coordinated timing. Every attack synchronized. No individual glory. No traditional tactics. Just survival. Krathzar stood, his massive stone body towering even in the third row. And if your plan fails? If we follow this untested strategy and still lose? Elena's expression was grave. Then we lose together as a united assembly, having tried something new. But if we continue as we are, we lose separately, species by species, having learned nothing. Commander Krathzar, your people have lost 68% of your fleet. The Silvari have lost 47%. The Zenith 53%. How many more battles can any of you sustain? The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of casualties. Every species in the chamber had buried their dead. Every species knew the mathematics of extinction. Vexthor stood again. I will support this plan. The Kratheon will serve as the primary engagement force. We will draw their attention while others strike. If humans can see what we cannot, then I will trust their vision. Lyrison rose, her light steady now. The Silvari Collective agrees. We will map their networks. Cooperation is preferable to extinction. Zictol's harmonics played an agreement chord. The Zenith Federation will provide precision transportation. The plan has merit. One by one, species stood, some eagerly seeing hope, others reluctantly seeing necessity. The vote was called. The measure passed with 78% approval, the highest unity vote in Assembly history. The presider's light pulsed with something that might have been hope. Then it is decided. The Assembly will implement the Unified Defense Strategy. All species will contribute according to the plan presented by Dr. Vasquez. Preparation begins immediately. The Void Swarm's largest force is approaching the Nexus sector. That is where we make our stand. The final preparation. The next 20 cycles were unlike anything the Assembly had experienced. Species that had barely spoken to each other were now training together. Kratheon warriors practiced coordination drills with Thorvan defenders. Silvari taught others how to interpret their energy readings. Zenith technicians worked with engineers from a dozen species to calibrate their rift generators. The human contingent moved between groups, coordinating, adjusting, teaching. Elena worked with command staff from every species, explaining the timing requirements, the synchronization needs, the critical importance of every role. Captain James Harrison led the human fleet in specialized maneuvers, practicing weapon deployments that seemed simple but required mathematical precision. His crews ran simulations until they could execute the patterns perfectly, even exhausted, even under fire. In the assembly hall, now transformed into a command center, Vexthor stood beside Elena, reviewing the final battle plan. His crimson armor was repaired now, polished, ready for what might be the last battle. Dr. Vasquez, he said quietly, I must ask, when you first took your seats in the back row, was this always your intention? To observe until you understood enough to guide? Elena smiled slightly. Commander, humanity learned something long ago. We were not the strongest species on our own world. We were not the fastest or the most dangerous. We survived by being clever, by learning, by cooperating. When we joined the assembly and saw the hierarchy, the front rows and back rows, we recognized an opportunity. To hide while studying us? To learn from everyone's mistakes before making our own, Elena corrected gently. Commander, the front row species are genuinely powerful. Your strength is real. Your courage is real. But strength and courage without wisdom lead to glorious defeats. We chose to gather wisdom first. Vexthor was quiet for a moment, and now you share that wisdom freely. Because wisdom means nothing if everyone dies, Elena said. We are all part of the assembly. All of us survive together. Or none of us survive at all. Vexthor extended one of his massive hands. Elena placed her small hand in it. They looked at each other, warrior and scholar, front row and back row united by necessity and growing respect. When this is over, Vexthor said, if we survive, the assembly should restructure its seating. No more front rows and back rows. No more hierarchy based on conquest. I would support that proposal, Elena said. But first we have to make sure there is an assembly to restructure. The alarm sounded throughout the station. Sensors detected massive spatial distortions in the Nexus sector. The Void Swarm was arriving and they were bringing everything they had. The Battle of Nexus Sector. The Nexus Sector was a junction point between 5 major star systems. Control it, and you controlled access to the Assembly's core territories. Lose it, and the path to the Heart Worlds lay open. The Assembly fleet gathered there, 3,200 ships from 52 different species. The largest combined force ever assembled, but it was not arranged by power or prestige. It was arranged by function. The Kratheon formed the center of the primary engagement sphere. 417 warships, including the rebuilt Crimson Fang with Vexthor commanding. Around them, Thorvan ships, Aetheron vessels, Keldrex swarm ships. Every heavy combat species humanity had designated for the anvil role. Behind and around them, arranged in carefully calculated positions, were the support ships. Sylvari vessels positioned to maximize their sensing range. Zenith Rift ships placed at precise coordinates. Energy distribution ships, communication relay ships, dozens of specialized vessels each with a specific function, and distributed throughout the formation, seemingly random but actually positioned with mathematical precision, were the human ships. 360 vessels, none of them traditional warships. They looked like cargo haulers, survey ships, transports. They carried no obvious weapons. They looked insignificant. That was exactly the point. On the Unity, the human flagship, Elena stood beside Captain Harrison on the bridge. Every screen showed different aspects of the fleet, different readiness reports, different countdowns. All ships report ready, Harrison said, his voice steady despite the tension. The swarm will arrive in approximately 8 minutes. Elena opened the fleet-wide channel. Her voice reached every ship, every species, every warrior and operator preparing for what might be the last battle. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez. In a few minutes, we will face the largest void swarm force ever encountered. Over 3,000 entities. They have defeated us repeatedly because we fought as individuals. Today, we fight as one assembly. Every species has a role. Every role is critical. No single species can win this battle, but together, all of us working in perfect coordination, we have a chance. Trust the plan. Trust each other. And remember, we are not fighting for glory. We are fighting for survival. All ships stand ready. The space around Nexus began to distort. Reality twisted. A massive rupture opened, bleeding darkness into normal space. And from that wound came the void swarm. 3,214 entities emerged. The smallest were 30 meters across. The largest was over 2 kilometers, a monstrosity that seemed to pull light into itself. They moved with coordinated purpose, spreading into an attack formation that had destroyed every fleet they had encountered. On the Crimson Fang, Vexthor stood in his command center, surrounded by his remaining senior warriors. His 4 hands rested on the control surfaces. His voice was calm, the calm of a warrior who had accepted death but would fight anyway. All Kratheon ships, all Anvil Force ships. Today we do not fight for victory. We fight to be seen. We fight to draw their attention. We fight so that others may strike the killing blows. There is honor in this. There is purpose in this. For the assembly. For survival, forward, the Anvil Force surged forward. 417 Kratheon ships, 312 Thorvan vessels, 278 ships from a dozen warrior species, over 1,000 warships charging at the swarm with weapons blazing, engines at maximum, appearing as aggressive and threatening as possible. The void swarm reacted exactly as predicted. 94% of their attention shifted to the charging fleet. They identified the Anvil Force as the primary threat. They began their adaptation sequence, analyzing weapons, calculating counters, preparing to demonstrate again why they were invincible. But they had never fought a unified assembly before. Swarm attention confirmed on primary engagement force. Larison's voice sang across the command network. Scanning for communication nodes. 17 primary nodes detected. Transmitting coordinates now. On the Unity, Elena watched the data flow in. The Sylvari had identified the network nodes with perfect precision. She looked at Harrison. Phase 2. Execute. At 17 specific points around the swarm formation, space cracked. Not large rifts, just small tears in reality. Zenith ships appeared for less than 3 seconds, just long enough to deploy specialized disruption devices, then vanished again. The disruption devices activated, broadcasting on the exact frequencies the swarm used for communication. Chaos spread through the swarm network. Individual entities began adapting independently, no longer coordinated. Their perfect unity fractured. Disruption successful. Ziegtal's harmonics resonated with satisfaction. Network synchronization degraded by 78%. Estimated window of vulnerability, 6 minutes 12 seconds. All strike forces, Elena commanded. You have your targets. Execute flanking maneuvers now. 47 small fleets, each a mix of species chosen for speed and precision, detached from the main formation. They did not attack the swarm directly. Instead, they moved to positions the swarm had left undefended. angles they had not anticipated because all their attention was on the anvil force. The swarm tried to adapt, but without coordination, each entity made different decisions. Some turned to face new threats. Others maintained focus on the primary engagement. Their formation, usually perfect, became confused. Phase 3, Elena said quietly. Human ships deploy harmony weapons. The 360 human vessels activated systems they had spent months designing and testing. They did not fire at the swarm. Instead, they fired at specific points in empty space. Their conventional energy beams and kinetic weapons intersecting at calculated angles. Where the weapons intersected, something extraordinary happened. The energy did not dissipate. It resonated. It amplified. Mathematical precision turned simple weapons into something entirely new. Resonance fields formed, invisible patterns of energy that expanded outward. The resonance fields touched the swarm entities and they shattered. Not from overwhelming power, but from precise frequency harmonics that disrupted their molecular structure at the fundamental level. It was not a weapon the swarm had ever seen. It was not a weapon they could adapt to quickly because it was not really a weapon at all. It was mathematics made physical. Dozens of entities fragmented. Hundreds more were damaged. The swarm's formation collapsed further as they tried to respond to threats coming from every direction, using methods they had never encountered. All ships. Maximum pressure. Vexthor commanded. The anvil force intensified their attack, weapons firing continuously, keeping the swarm's attention divided. The battle became a symphony of coordination. Krathian warriors held the front while Silvery provided real-time intelligence. Zenith created instant pathways for strike teams to appear and disappear. Aetheron ships generated electromagnetic storms that further disrupted swarm communications. Species from every row of the assembly, from the most powerful to the least, played their part with precision. The swarm fought back desperately. Their weapons still killed. Ships still died. The Krathian lost 73 vessels. The Thorvins lost 142. Casualties mounted across every species. But for every ship lost, 50 entities fell, because the swarm could not adapt. Not to coordination they had never seen. Not to weapons used only once. Not to diversity unified by a single purpose. The battle lasted 4 hours and 17 minutes. When the last entity finally fell, when the final resonance field dissipated, when the space around Nexus cleared of threats, the surviving ships hung in exhausted silence. Over 800 ships had been destroyed. Over 200,000 individuals had died. But 3,214 void swarm entities had been eliminated. Every single one. The largest concentration of swarm forces ever encountered had been completely destroyed. On the Unity, Elena closed her eyes and allowed herself one moment of grief for those who had fallen. Then she opened the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Vasquez. The Nexus sector is secure. The Void Swarm has been defeated. Today we proved that unity is stronger than individual might. Today we proved that cooperation defeats adaptation. Today we proved that the Assembly, all of us together, can face any threat. Honor to the fallen, gratitude to the survivors. This was not a human victory. This was an Assembly victory. All species, all contributions, one purpose. This is what we can achieve when we fight as one. The aftermath: 3 months after the Battle of Nexus Sector, the Assembly Hall reconvened for the first time since the victory. But when representatives arrived, they found the chamber transformed. The circular rows of seats had been removed. In their place, a new arrangement. A single circular table large enough for every species to have a place, with no position more prominent than any other. No front row. No back row. Just the Assembly, as equals. Dr. Elena Vasquez entered with the human delegation and found her place at the table between the Krathian section and the Silvari section. Vexthor was already seated, his armor bearing new decorations honoring the fallen. He nodded to her in respect. Narration arrived, her crystalline form glowing brightly, fully healed now. She took her seat with a musical greeting that the translators rendered as simple welcome. Species filed in, taking their places. Warriors sat beside scholars. Technologists sat beside telepaths. The powerful sat beside the patient. All equal. All valued. The presider materialized at the center of the table, its form brighter than before. The Assembly convenes for the first time in our new format. The Battle of Nexus demonstrated that our old hierarchies were not just outdated, but dangerous. Today we acknowledge that every species brings value, every perspective matters. From this day forward, we are not species ranked by conquest or power. We are the Galactic Assembly, united by cooperation. Applause filled the chamber, not from any single species, but from all of them. Vexthor stood. I wish to speak. The Kratheon Empire has always valued strength and courage above all else. We believe that power determined worth. The humans, whom we mocked for sitting in the back, taught us a greater truth. Intelligence is strength. Patience is courage. Observation is action. We were wrong to judge them by our standards. They were right to judge situations by wisdom. He turned to Elena. Dr. Vasquez, on behalf of the Kratheon Empire, I offer formal apology for our dismissive treatment. You and your species saved us all. Elena stood and bowed slightly. Commander Vexthor, humanity accepts your words with gratitude. But we did not save anyone alone. Every species here contributed to the victory. That is the lesson we hope everyone learned. Alone, we are all weak. Together, we are invincible. She looked around the table, meeting eyes from dozens of species. Humanity sat in the back row not because we were weak, though we are not the strongest. We sat in the back because we understood something from our own history. The strongest do not always survive. The most aggressive do not always win. But the most adaptable, the most cooperative, the most willing to learn from others, they endure. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We watched you all. We learned from your courage, your innovations, your determination. Every battle you fought, even the ones you lost, taught us something. You were teaching us how to help you, even though you did not know it. That is why we honor every species that fought before the final battle. Your sacrifices gave us the knowledge we needed. Lyrison sang softly. Perhaps the question is not where we sit, but how we see. The humans saw the whole chamber. They saw connections we missed. They saw strength in cooperation that we had forgotten. This is wisdom we should all embrace. Zigtal's harmonics added agreement. The Zenith proposed that the Assembly adopt a new operating principle: strength through diversity. Each species contributes what they do best. All contributions are valued equally. No hierarchy except expertise in relevant matters. The proposal was discussed, refined, and voted upon. It passed with 96% approval. As the session concluded, Elena stood at the large windows overlooking the stars. Vexthor approached, his massive form surprisingly quiet. I have been wondering, Doctor. When humanity first requested the back row seats, was it really because you arrived late to the assembly? Or did you choose that position deliberately? Elena smiled, a small mysterious expression. Does it matter, Commander? We sat where we could learn the most. Whether by design or fortune, we ended up exactly where we needed to be. You could have told us earlier, shared your observations sooner. More lives might have been saved. Perhaps, Elena acknowledged. But if we had spoken without data, without proof, without earning respect through demonstrated value, would you have listened? Would any front row species have followed guidance from the back row? Vexthor considered this. No, we would not have. We had to lose enough to be willing to change. That is a harsh truth. War is harsh, Elena said quietly, but survival is worth any price. And now perhaps we have learned enough that the next threat will not cost so much. She turned to face him. Commander, humanity has a saying. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. The Assembly has a new chance now, a chance to build something better than hierarchy and competition. A chance to prove that civilizations working together can achieve what no single civilization could manage alone. I hope we take that chance. Vexithor extended his hand again, and again Elena placed hers in it. Two species, once separated by rows and prejudice, now united by shared struggle and mutual respect. We will take that chance, Doctor. The Assembly has learned its lesson. We will not forget what cooperation achieved. We will not forget that wisdom can come from unexpected places. And we will not forget that the species in the back row saw what we could not. Elena smiled. Then perhaps there are no more back rows, Commander. Just the Assembly looking forward together. They stood there, looking out at the stars, at the vast galaxy that held both threats and wonders. Behind them, species from across known space mingled and talked, no longer divided by false hierarchies but united by common purpose. The humans had sat in the back to learn. They had watched and waited and gathered wisdom while others bled. It had seemed like cowardice. It had looked like weakness. But in the end, it had been the patient gathering of knowledge that saved them all. Comments for next.